Today's episode is a special one, and it's a different format than what I've been doing. My friend Gwen Sandifer invited me to be on her podcast, Instigating Women Friends, to discuss World Health Day, which is today, April 7th. It's an annual day put on by the World Health Organization, geared to highlight certain topics depending on what they choose. And for this year, they chose Healthy Beginnings, Hopeful Futures, which is supposed to kick off a year-long campaign on maternal and newborn health. Gwen is a previous healthcare executive who started her own executive coaching and consulting business, Loud Minds. And she is very, very passionate about trying to move the needle and better women's well-being and healthcare. So she invited me on knowing that I had an ectopic pregnancy, and she wanted to dive into that a little bit because obviously that fits the topic today. The campaign for World Health Day urges governments and the health community to ramp up efforts to end preventable maternal and newborn deaths. And obviously, ectopic pregnancy falls into that category because of the life-threatening aspects. So she invited me on to her podcast and said that I am able to share that recording on the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast. So this is just an introduction, but you're about to listen to our amazing conversation with Gwen, who is amazing, and I look up to her so much. And then also Gwen's friend and my new friend, Liz. So I hope you enjoy, and happy World Health Day.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Got Kirsten, got Liz. We're excited and, really thinking we've got an important topic today as well. So, want to get a little serious about World Health Day. And many times when World Health Day or these big international days are announced, we think, oh, that has something to do with something I'm not involved in. And as I dug into the theme for World Health Day 2025, which is Healthy Beginnings and Hopeful Futures, I thought I'm just going to check and see who this may impact. Is there anyone close to me that theme itself might have a story? And here we are, two people I'm very, very close to. And also, there's a lot in the news right now about research funding cuts, and just hard red lines on anything having to do with DE&I, which in and of itself is an issue. Whether you're political or not, it's just an issue to redline research when the US funds most of the research of the world. But when you also think about DE&I, and they specifically redline the word women, whether you're political or not, whatever your beliefs are or not, it's a fact that that's half the population of the United States.
And you came from a woman. Whoever you are, you came from a woman.
We all came from women. There's no argument there. And so today we're wrapping those two themes together a little bit to prove that we're all impacted by these big international days of celebration, recognition, and focus. And we're all impacted by redlining research in some way, shape, or form. So the topic of the day is ectopic pregnancy. And that certainly relates to healthy beginnings and hopeful futures. That affects moms, it affects babies, it affects families. And so I want to turn it over to Kirsten first to give us some insights for those of you that have never experienced an ectopic pregnancy yourself or in your family, you may not even know what that is. And then Liz has her own story, which she'll pepper in throughout our episode today. And then we'll just, again, try to emphasize throughout what you need to know, what you need to speak up about, what questions you need to be asking, and what takeaways you have from this to use your voice. Always use your voice. Kirsten, turn it over to you.
Yes. Thank you for letting us talk about this unspoken topic. I had an ectopic pregnancy in February 2022. Now, for some context, my husband Jeff and I got married in 2019, and we wanted to wait a couple years to expand our family. We wanted to travel, have fun, just be husband and wife. So when 2022 rolled around and hit, we thought, okay, we're ready. Let's try. We don't know how long it's going to take to grow our family. And thankfully, it happened really fast. We conceived very easily. February 5th is when I tested positive, and we were super excited. I mean, over the moon. We had no idea that type of feeling, you know, when you want something so bad and it's real. You see those two lines on a pregnancy test. And, you know, throughout the next couple of weeks, we did all of the fun things. We went to Bye Bye Baby. We were trying out strollers. We ordered our nursery furniture because at that time there was still a lot of backdated furniture? Yeah,
Back ordered.
back ordered. There's the word. So we ordered our furniture a couple weeks later because we were told it was on back order for 6+ months. So we were like, okay, we got to do it because we need a bed for a baby come October. Initially, when I tested positive, I was spotting quite a bit. The spotting eventually turned into bleeding. And of course, you turn to your best friend Google and start searching the internet for answers. Why am I spotting? Why am I bleeding? What could this mean? And you just go down a rabbit hole. Well, seeing the not positive answers on the internet resulted in me messaging our doctor, calling our doctor quite a bit, because I just felt like something wasn't right. I have had friends who had healthy pregnancies. I turned to my mom. I turned to other female people that I look up to in my life. And again, I just knew something was off. And my doctor continuously told me this is a regular symptom, you know, keep an eye on it, but everything's okay. It's normal. Well, it ultimately, I found out it wasn't normal at the time, but it took about 15 days for me to actually get some additional testing for the symptoms that I was experiencing. So again, February 5, I tested positive. February 21 is when I was able to get lab work done. And that lab work was used to test my HCG levels to see where I'm at. And usually when you're pregnant and you get your blood work done, you go every other day to see if your HCG numbers double. If they double, that's a great sign that you have a healthy pregnancy. If they don't double, that's when additional labs are done, additional testing, maybe ultrasounds. So my first HCG was 510. that was pretty normal for how many weeks I was. And then on that second blood draw, I was only 575. So I didn't even get to the next hundreds. So then I went again 2 days later, and my numbers only went to 628. And because of that, clearly they weren't doubling even after several days. So February 24, my doctor had said, come in for an ultrasound. Let's see if we can see your baby. I go in, we couldn't find anything. They couldn't even see if there was a viable pregnancy outside of my uterus. And I guess just to preface, an ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy outside of your uterus. So it can be in your ovaries, it can be in your tube, it can be in your C-section scar. There's 7 different kinds of ectopic pregnancies. And, they couldn't find the pregnancy, but they were very certain that it was an ectopic pregnancy. I never got confirmation. However, right then and there, during the ultrasound, the tech left, came in, let me know that this is what's going on, and these are some potential outcomes. I didn't really get many details regarding treatment. That was the first time I ever heard what an ectopic pregnancy was.
Okay.
Again, this is my first pregnancy ever. I've only been surrounded by healthy pregnancies. And later down the line, I found out my mom has had several miscarriages, not an ectopic, because those are definitely different experiences. But I just didn't know the severity of an ectopic pregnancy. It's life-threatening. It's basically an unviable pregnancy that can burst in your tube, ovaries, wherever it is outside of your uterus, and the mom's life is threatened based on intervention. So at that point, my husband and I were sitting in that room, completely shocked, not understanding what's going on. Again, we turned to Google. And I, just knowing my personality, I'm like, I don't want to give up. Can I continue to do lab work to see if my numbers magically start doubling? I just didn't want to give up. And my doctor had let me know the risk of that because the timeline is very important regarding ectopic pregnancy. It's basically a ticking time bomb.
Right. The intervention is critical, right? And I'm just sitting here listening to you thinking that you had to Google to understand what was happening and that you even found out about it from a tech. It's just mind-boggling to me, and the experience you had and how that connects back to the theme of healthy beginnings when in 2022 you had an atrocious care experience.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to roll back to the 50s.
Yeah. And finding out it's a ticking time bomb for your life, knowing that you'd been told it's fine, it's normal, had to create some anger.
Absolutely. Yeah. What ended up happening, Kirsten?
Yeah, I was really angry. And I think I felt like I couldn't do what my body was made to do. There was a lot of, I just was mad at myself, mad at my body. Anyway, I asked for additional labs, and thankfully my doctor let me do it. but also told me the risks of that. My first lab after the ultrasound was 600, and the number prior to that was 628. So it started going down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I got the call from my doctor saying, you know, it's decreasing now. We've done all we can. I need you to go here to get an emergency dose of methotrexate, which is a very common injection used to treat ectopic pregnancy. It's used to dissolve the cells within your pregnancy. And that was also a whirlwind because it wasn't even at a hospital that we went to. It was at an infusion center in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that day vividly, the day that I got the injections, and feeling like when I got them, it was like, you know, it's very much like you're doing this to your baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just an injection.
It's not. And what I've learned throughout time is that drug is used for abortions. And I know that's a whole nother topic, but there's a lot of issues around ectopic pregnancy and the treatment revolving around abortion laws. But
And the risk moms take and the risk healthcare professionals take in order to treat an ectopic pregnancy, just
yeah.
treatment is similar to an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the important point there in terms of going back to the healthy beginnings is that the people who are trying to remove our rights to govern our own bodies they don't even understand. They conflate, right? They conflate abortion with ectopic pregnancy because they don't understand anything related to maternal health. Right. And so, to your point, you went to an infusion center, which was for cancer, because methotrexate is used for cancer in higher doses. And if you think about women going forward who need this in order to save their lives, right? The availability of it in pregnancy will go away in many of the states that are making abortion care unavailable and illegal. Back to you.
Right. There's this one article, and I can try and find it. But it was, a couple women were interviewed that had ectopic pregnancies in the state of Texas. And Texas is one of the states that has an abortion ban, and they had to seek somewhere else to get life-saving treatment for their ectopic pregnancies. And it blows my mind that that sort of thing is even going on. And it's a very serious topic. It's not black or white. There's so much gray. And in the moment when I was receiving the injections, I just remember such a flood of warmth throughout my body. Like I could physically feel it going into my body. And I wish I knew what was going to be following after that, because holy cow, there's so much mental following an ectopic pregnancy, let alone anything regarding pregnancy loss. And yeah, it's physically tolling, but the mental aspect was like no other. It was completely unexplainable.
Mhm.
And
And you can't get that emotional support in an infusion center out in the middle of nowhere.
no, and I had zero resources following. I didn't know anyone who had an ectopic pregnancy. I looked to Facebook groups to find support, and those almost made me more scared and overwhelmed. I found a therapist probably a couple weeks following treatment, and that really helped me just get the feelings out that I needed to get out. And one thing to note about methotrexate is it stays in your system for 3 months.
Oh,
And during those 3 months, you cannot try to conceive again because there's risk of pregnancy abnormalities and issues with the actual baby. So that alone was really tough for me because I automatically was like, I'm just going to get back up and build my family right away because that's just my personality. But being told and having that uncontrol to wait 3 months, that was really tough. And I didn't even get my cycle back until, gosh, 5 or 6 months later because of the trauma that this medication did to my body. I had to get it induced, and that started all the different fertility testing. And part of World Health Day is talking about hopeful futures.
mhm.
And I never knew that having an ectopic pregnancy would cause some fertility impact on my body, in addition to the potential of having another ectopic pregnancy. Because once you have one, you're at risk to have another, and so on. So I felt like that hopeful future was ripped away from me. The excitement of pregnancy wasn't there because I I just thought it wasn't going to happen for me. And I was scared that it was going to happen again. And I know a lot of women in the same situation are terrified of it happening again. But to segue to something positive, I did finally conceive and have a healthy pregnancy. My son is 16 months and he's just the light of our life. And I use my story to spread hope to other women who are going through ectopic pregnancies that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, it can be really dark, but you just have to remain positive and hopeful throughout the entire journey and know that everything happens for a reason. And I use my story to help other women going through it. When I was in the thick of my ectopic, I started an Instagram account as a online journal, just sharing all my thoughts and feelings, almost like, what they say in therapy, use a journal, write everything out. Well,
Mhm.
I thought, oh, I'll share everything on Instagram and see if I am helping other women. And I have, and, I have a okay following, but it fills my heart to use some of that pain that I had and be more purposeful from
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of us use our experiences to better the world. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I appreciate you wanting to talk about this, Gwen, and
Liz, you and I connected because you also experienced an ectopic, and I feel like that connected us on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And it gives me goosebumps to think that what you're doing with your podcast and your social media presence is providing both that emotional support and information that you did not receive
Mhm.
throughout. I mean, literally from the moment where you felt something was wrong and you weren't listened to, all the way to nobody explained to you the implication of methotrexate,
Yeah.
right? It's staggering, and that this was in 2022. My ectopic was in 2006. Um, First pregnancy, all like so many similarities, including believing that what I was experiencing was just part of maybe pregnancy, and I had the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, and I had my friend Jenny, who is such a researcher, and so we diagnosed me with constipation because I had such extreme pain in my pelvic area, and mine turned out to be in my fallopian tube. And so again, in terms of both the life of the mother and the implication for future fertility, right? If I hadn't been ultimately listened to, which I was, and they brought me right in and did a ultrasound, and they couldn't 100% confirm it was in my fallopian tube, but they believed that that's where it was based on my symptoms. Um, they went in, and Trina Brodsky, who I ended up working with for 10 years, she managed to save my tube because of that timing. But still, you're being wheeled into the OR and you're still like, what is it?
So you had a surgical intervention, Liz.
I had both because with the surgery, they really focused on getting the main part of the pregnancy out of the tube, but then they couldn't be sure that it was going to be fully taken care of. And so I also had methotrexate. I had it orally. But again, I think when we think about what is missing, I was supposed to go on a business trip 24 hours later, and my doctor at the time let me go.
Wow.
And so I ended up having all of those symptoms, which are so horrible, so painful, by myself in a hotel in Toronto, Canada.
Mm.
And so yeah, I feel like my story is both one of early intervention, but still that lack of understanding, having it explained to you what you can expect when you take the methotrexate. And my doctor was a man and I loved him, but there's a part of me that's like, why did you let me go on that business trip?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because you had no way of knowing what would come after.
Right. So, yeah, it's there, as Kirsten really eloquently explained, there's both the maternal health perspective and the importance of being listened to, which women often are not, but that if you are not listened to, then your outcome literally is impacted, as well as your future fertility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you had lost your tube, then your ability to conceive would have been reduced significantly.
Right, 50%. And as Kirsten brought up, once you have one ectopic pregnancy, you're far likelier, it was like 20 times or something, likelier to have a second one. And if you only have one tube, right? So
Right.
it's just staggering to me. And it comes back to, oh, by the way, when you think about the removal, the eradication of research,
Yeah.
and how that connects to maternal and fetal outcomes, who's it going to impact the most? Black women, because
Mhm.
they already have such a higher rate of adverse maternal outcomes, including maternal demise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's get real about our US healthcare statistics. Maternal mortality is very high in the US, all of it, white, black, brown, but certainly higher in black and brown populations. It's so high that there are, all kinds of groups. There were all kinds of groups looking at research about why and how we can make maternal health better in the United States. And a lot of anger and frustration about why are we experiencing these high rates in the richest, most powerful country in the world who does the most research? And so now, if all of that research is stopping, it's up to us to have these kinds of conversations. If the research is lacking, we have to use our voice, create communities, create awareness, and recognize I've got stories to people that I'm with more often than anyone, and yet we're white privileged women. It's so important for Black and Brown and all women to really understand this and to help each other.
And yeah, to advocate for ourselves and for one another.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that they're trying to get more women to do through World Health Day is share their stories when they're comfortable. I think that's a big piece because it can be a very vulnerable thing to talk about, but it needs to talk about so we can move the needle on proper care because it's important no matter the circumstance, but we need to do it together and continue to share stories.
yeah,
Here's to that.
absolutely. Another
I have
cheers.
a question. Cheers.
Yes.
Did you have to get lab work after methotrexate?
This was a bit of time ago, so let me cast my memory back. Yeah, I did.
Okay. To follow your numbers?
To make sure that they went down to 0. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Because that is a piece to the whole experience that a lot of women find triggering and traumatizing because for those that don't know, once you get treatment, especially methotrexate, you have to get your lab work done consistently to see if your HCG numbers go to below 5. Once you're below 5, means the treatment did its job. And for some, that could be a couple weeks. For some women, it could be a couple months. It just depends where your numbers were at. Since mine were low, essentially, it took me about 3 weeks to get below 5, but I was going to the lab 2-3 times a week.
Mm.
And every lab visit was a reminder of the experience I just had, the fact that I felt let down by my body and that I did something wrong. And that's a very common feeling in this instance. And it's often overlooked or not thought about because people just don't know what they don't know. And ectopic pregnancy is very much unspoken about. But on top of that, a lot of times at labs, there are pregnant women and kids sitting around to get their lab work done. And that's just another,
Yeah. Stark reminder.
mhm.
That you're
And
not
so
enough.
yeah, it's hard. And I know women all over, whether in the US, the UK, some women have to get their lab work at the maternity ward at the hospital.
Mm.
They've gotten treatment and had to sit in a bed next to a woman who is giving birth to a healthy baby. And again, those sorts of triggering moments following an ectopic pregnancy are really important to highlight, and it goes with the mental aspect of World Health Day. There's just so many different mental health triggers that hit us and stay with us too.
Mhm. So then, Kirsten, do you suggest that through information and sharing like today, that women really grab onto their own agency and in those situations talk to their physician about alternatives for lab draws, mental, emotional, spiritual support throughout the process if the physician or providers or health system doesn't bring these things up, to instead bring them up yourself?
Yes. Advocate for yourself and for situations like that so you don't put yourself in those situations. A lot of times women will come to me when they find out they're pregnant again after an ectopic, which is very exciting and great news. But again, that excitement piece is ripped away from you, and you automatically go into, oh my gosh, what was that tingy feeling? What was that cramp? You're very sensitive about your body. And I very much advocate call your doctor, message your doctor, get lab work done early on. Try and request an early ultrasound. Like you said, Gwen, ask your doctor if there are alternate labs if you are experiencing an ectopic. Just try and gather all of the information you can, because yes, an ectopic pregnancy isn't preventable. However, the severity of it can be preventable. You just have to become your own expert, I guess.
Mhm. And so I'm going to post this to Loud Minds. Liz, you're going to post this to Gal Matrix, your podcast. Kirsten, you have your podcast and your own social media platforms. You'll have the channels, in the post, so anyone can reach out. It's up to us to spread the word about this topic. It's up to us to really change our mindset about what World Health Day is all about. And it's about not just awareness, but taking action and embracing your agency and helping communities of women around the world.
Yep.
Any
Exactly.
final thoughts?
Just
Nope.
appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I so appreciate you being vulnerable. I know this was really difficult, Kirsten and Liz, but it's really helpful. I've never experienced it and haven't experienced, I didn't think anyone close to me that had. So if we're not talking about it, we just don't even know what we don't know.
Mhm.
So
Thank you for this safe space. It's important.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you both. Bye-bye.
Bye.